Good evening from Singapore. I'm Douglas Abrams from Expara. I'm here to talk about crisis, danger, and opportunity. My favorite Chinese character is a character called Wei Ji in Mandarin. If you want to see what that character looks like, you can go to the Expara website because it's embedded in the Expara logo, and it's also usually on the first slide of every presentation that I've done since 2003. This character means crisis. And I've been talking about crisis for many years in the context of using crisis as an analogy for a lot of the things that we do in startup and venture capital. But now we find ourselves in the midst of an enormous world crisis, and I think the time is very right to talk in detail about the danger and opportunity embedded in crisis. So if we look at the Chinese character Wei Ji, we see that it's comprised of two sub-characters, and each of these characters can be individually translated. The Wei means danger, and Ji means opportunity. So when we think about what does the word crisis connote, what is the most important characteristic of a crisis, which we're all living through right now. Most important characteristic of a crisis is it's a situation that is not in stasis. It's a situation that is at a critical turning point, and we can see every day we're living this now. We're in a situation that's at a critical turning point or reaching a critical turning point. So far, all the critical turning points have been bad. But at some point in the crisis, it's going to break, and then critical turning point is going to turn good. So when we think more deeply about crisis and understand the Wei Ji character relationship to crisis, we can see that crisis has two sides. Crisis has danger and crisis has opportunity, because it's a situation that will not stay the same. We know it's going to turn one direction or another in the relatively near future. Another way to think about this is, in every situation of danger, there is opportunity. In order to get to the opportunity, we have to get through the danger. And this is exactly, I believe, where we find ourselves right now with the COVID pandemic crisis. Now, of course, this has tremendous relevance to what's going on day to day, but what does it have to do with the startups and venture capital? Because if you think about the two words that comprise the crisis character, danger and opportunity, they sound a lot like two words that define entrepreneurship, high risk, high return entrepreneurship and venture capital, which are risk and return. So danger, opportunity, risk, and return. What is the relationship between risk and return? When we hear these two words together, I think the first thing that probably crosses your mind is high risk, high return. And the second is probably low risk, low return. When you hear these two pairs of words together, they sound like they mean two versions of the same thing. But do they actually mean two versions of the same thing, or do they mean something very different? I actually think that they mean something very different. And we can understand that better if we look at the second pair of words first. So low risk, low return. What does low risk, low return actually mean? Is it fair to say if I take low risk, then I will receive low return? And this is transforming low risk, low return into an if-then logical proposition, which, if it's true, should be true 100% of the time. So can you think about if I take low risk, I will receive low return. Is it true 100% of the time? I think a lot of people would argue no. And when I ask this question to groups of people, almost everyone says no. But then when I challenge them to think of an example that proves that this statement is false, they're at a loss. Because why? If this statement, if I take low risk, then I will receive low return is false, there should be some situation where if I take low risk, I can receive medium return, high return, or in any case, something better than low return. And I think if you think about it carefully and you work through all the different examples, you're going to find there are actually no true cases of if I take low risk, then I will receive other than low return. Because why? What determines return is the supply and demand of capital in investment markets. So in the long run, every investment is going to pay a return commensurate with its risk because that's what investors will demand. And companies seeking capital will only pay returns commensurate with the risk because that's what the maximum that they need to pay, and they're not going to want to pay more than that. So if you follow that logic carefully, I think you're going to find there are no repeatable low risk, high return investments. Now, obviously, when we turn to the first phrase, or the first pair of words, high risk, high return, we can't transform those into the same type of if-then statement and get a true answer. Obviously, we can't say if I take high risk, then I will receive high return, because that's what high risk means. High risk means the volatility of return, and therefore, if I take high risk, I will receive either high return, low return, no return, or somewhere in the middle. So we can convert that into a true if-then statement, but we have to do it the other way. We have to say, if I want to receive high return, then I must take high risk. And this is what startup and venture capital is all about. Startup and venture capital is about taking high risk to generate high return. And this is why venture capital exists. Venture capital exists to provide a channel for investors who want high return to put capital at risk and generate higher return than they're currently receiving in their existing investments. So that means that entrepreneurs who are seeking venture capital exist to, in the context of the venture capital industry, exist to provide high risk opportunities for investors who want to generate higher return. And this leads to some very, I would say, counterintuitive understanding of some common situation that we find ourselves in. So, for example, I like to ask people, okay, you're a venture capital investor and you're presented with two potential investments. One, the entrepreneur says that this is a great investment and it's 100% guaranteed to succeed. And the second entrepreneur says, I also have a great investment, it's 97% guaranteed to fail. And from the venture capital perspective, which opportunity do you want? And I think our intuitive reaction is we want the first investment because it's 100% guaranteed to succeed. But in fact, if we believe the entrepreneur, if we believe that to be true, we definitely don't want that investment. We don't want to make investments that are 100% guaranteed to succeed, because if they really were, then return would be zero. There's no risk, and therefore there must be no return. And the investment that's 97% guaranteed to fail is very high risk. So the 3% of the time that it does succeed, it should generate very high return. And in fact, this is exactly how it works in venture capital investment. We invest in diversified portfolio of companies with each having very high risk of failure. And if we invest in the right portfolio companies and properly diversify and then get a little lucky, then we will generate very high returns from around somewhere between 3 and 20% of the portfolio. So that's what danger and opportunity looks like in the context of risk and return in general terms in startup and venture capital investing. The other, I think, very relevant topic that we're all discussing daily as a result of the pandemic that we find ourselves in the midst of is what drives demand. So if the danger creates opportunity, then there should be opportunities for entrepreneurs and startups to create new innovative products and services that will help us to help the world to get through the current pandemic crisis and improve the quality of life, both for individuals and quality of work and productivity during this crisis and after. I believe that the world is probably going to be different after the end of this pandemic. And I also believe there's a risk that there'll be future pandemics, and hopefully we'll have learned a lot of lessons from this, but the way that this type of crisis can change people's lives and the economy and business environment is going to be very, very bad for some companies and sectors, but also is going to create opportunities for new sectors and new companies. So where would we start as an entrepreneur thinking, what can I do to try to help people, help businesses, help the world to get through this crisis and improve the quality of life for everybody, starting with solving painful problems for customers. And when we look at products from entrepreneurs and look at startup companies and try to evaluate which ones are the most promising, the first two things that we look at are what's innovative about the company's product and what is the painful problem that they're solving for customers. Again, this is something I've been talking about for almost 20 years and elaborating further about how pain drives demand, because pain is the most powerful motivator that people have to change what they're currently doing and do something different. And obviously we're seeing that in an incredibly painful way in the news every day for the last several months. Many new painful problems are being introduced into people's lives, into the economy, into the business environment. So I think this creates a tremendous opportunity for entrepreneurs and startups to try to develop products and services that will help to solve the many painful problems that have occurred over the last couple of weeks or months that I think nobody ever imagined we were going to be facing. Of course, some entrepreneurs and startups are already working on vaccines and better test kits and medical devices, and that's great, and definitely that's going to make a huge difference. But I think entrepreneurs and startups who are not in medtech, not in biotech, can also be developing technology-based solutions that help people to deal with the changing and painful environment that they find themselves in now. So, for example, everybody's working from home. Many types of businesses are under incredible pressure. Logistics businesses, face-to-face businesses, retail businesses, all getting crushed by the pandemic. What can we in the startup and venture capital sector do to try to, as quickly as possible, develop products and services that help people and businesses to deal with the disruption that's taking place across the world, even as we speak. And at Expara, we're not just talking about this. So Expara, we announced yesterday that we're launching an accelerator program for entrepreneurs and startups that are seeking to develop products and companies that help to address any aspect of the disruption that's being caused by the pandemic. This is going to be, it's available now on our website, vertec.expara.com, for startups and entrepreneurs to apply. The entire program will be conducted online and virtual. So although we're based in Singapore, which is, been dealing with the pandemic almost from day one, but there's no travel involved, there's no face-to-face involved. The entire program will take place virtually online, and we are encouraging startups from around the world to apply. You can find out more details on the website. We're also looking for partners, companies and investors who are interested to join us in this effort to try to help entrepreneurs and startups and also help the world get off the back foot. And of course, we have to take all the important defensive steps that we've been taking. We need to continue to do that. But now we also hope that we can get on the offense and see what we can do to actually make things better using innovation, using technology, using entrepreneurship and startups to solve the manifold problems that are manifesting, all across the globe. So I hope that everybody remembers the crisis is a situation that contains both danger and opportunity. It's a crisis that's, it's a situation that's not in stasis. What we know about crisis is that it's not going to stay the same. Up until now, we've been on the trajectory of the crisis where it's getting worse and worse, but it is going to get to a point where it's going to turn the other way and it's going to start to improve. So I hope that we can all play our part to try to speed that up and make this better with innovation, technology, and entrepreneurial drive, and hope that you will join us on that journey. So thank you very much, and I am happy to take any questions if you have any questions you want to put into the chat window.